Forward. I looked at the world and saw that it was darkened by sorrow and scorched by the flames of suffering. And I wondered, why? But no matter how much I looked, I couldn't find a reason. I read mountains of books, but even in them I found no answer. And when I looked inside myself, I found the reason and understood its nature. Looking even deeper into myself, I found the cure. I discovered that there is only one law in the world, the law of love, only one life, the life according to that law, and only one truth, the truth of a humble spirit and a meek heart. And a dream was born in me to write a book that would help all people whether they were rich or poor, educated or not, practical or out of this world, to find within themselves the source of success, happiness, victories, achievements, everything real and true. This dream lived in me until it became a reality. And now I send the fruits of my labor out into the world on a mission of healing and blessing, knowing that my words will surely find their way into the homes and hearts of those who are waiting and ready to receive them. James Allen. Chapter 1. A Lesson in Evil. Anxiety, suffering, and sorrow are constant companions of life. There is not a heart in the whole world that has never suffered. There is no spirit that has not once drowned in the dark abyss of trouble. There is no eye that does not weep bitter tears in a fit of unspeakable longing. There is no home where the most terrible plagues, sickness and death, have not set foot. They tear apart loving hearts and shroud everything around them in a mournful cloak of sadness. We are all, each to a certain extent, caught in the strong and seemingly indestructible net of evil, so that mankind has only suffering, misery, and distress ahead of us. In the hope of escaping or at least diluting this oppressive gloom, people instinctively resort to all sorts of tricks and look for various loopholes, through which they hope to break into the land of eternal happiness. Such are the drunkard and the harlot, who revel in sensual pleasures, such is the refined aesthete, who shields himself from human sorrows by surrounding himself with languid objects of luxury. Such is he who covets wealth or fame and in whom everything is subordinated to the attainment of this goal, and such are those who seek solace in the performance of religious rituals. And it even seems as if they have all found the happiness they seek, and their souls are asleep for the time being, lulled by a sweet sense of security. But eventually the day comes when they fall ill, or grief, misfortune, and temptation rush into their fragile souls, and the delicate fabric of their imagined happiness is torn to shreds. So, everyone has the sword of Damocles of suffering hanging over their head, ready to snap at any moment and strike someone who has not protected themselves. A child cries because he can't wait to be an adult. And adults weep for the lost paradise of childhood. The poor man grumbles, trapped in the bondage of poverty. The rich man lives in fear of poverty, or is willing to turn over the whole world in search of the ghost of what he calls happiness. At times it seems to man that he has found true peace and happiness by embracing this or that religion, by beginning to practice a certain philosophy, or by discovering for himself an intellectual or artistic ideal. But as soon as a strong temptation appears on the horizon, it turns out that religion is powerless or insufficient, that theoretical philosophy is no support, and that the ideal cherished for years is immediately shattered. But if so, is it impossible to live life without suffering and sorrow? Is there no remedy that can rid us of evil? Will eternal happiness, constant well-being and prosperity, and indestructible peace forever remain a foolish dream? No, I am happy to tell you. There is a way to destroy evil, to put an end to disease, poverty, and every other hardship. There is a way to ensure our continued well-being and prosperity without the fear that sorrows will return. There is a way to taste serene tranquility and happiness. And the first step toward this glorious goal is a proper understanding of the nature of evil. It is not enough to deny or ignore evil. It is necessary to understand what it is. Praying to God alone will not eliminate evil. It is necessary to find out where it came from and what lesson it carries with it. There is no point in tearing and tossing and shaking the shackles in anger. It is more important to understand how and why you, the reader, find yourself in these shackles. Therefore, you must learn to understand yourself, to control yourself, and to listen to yourself. There is no place for childish stubbornness in the school of life. It is time for us to learn the lessons that have been given for our edification and for our benefit, with humility and meekness. For evil is not a force with unlimited power over the universe. It is only an episode in life, and as such, it edifies those who are willing to learn. Evil is not something abstract outside of ourselves. It is our own experience. If we constantly control ourselves and systematically cleanse our own souls, we can gradually get to the root of evil, and then we will definitely eradicate it. Evil is not eternal. It is rooted in ignorance of the true nature and hierarchy of things, and as long as we remain in such ignorance, we will remain its victims. There is no evil in the universe that is not the result of ignorance. And there is no evil that, if we were ready and willing to learn a lesson from it, would not take us to a higher level of wisdom. But evil goes nowhere because people are neither ready nor willing to learn from it. I knew a child who, every night when his mother put him to bed, cried to be allowed to play with a candle. One evening, when the mother hesitated for a moment, the child grabbed the lighted candle. What happened next is clear, and the child never asked to be given such a toy again. Once he did something stupid, he learned a very concrete lesson to obey his mother, and he learned that fire burns. This little incident is a perfect illustration of where sin and evil come from, what their meaning is, and what they ultimately lead to. This child suffered from ignorance of the true nature of fire. In the same way, older children suffer from ignorance of the true nature of the things they cry out for and chase. And when they get what they want, it will hurt them just the same, with the difference that in the latter case ignorance and evil have deeper roots and are more hidden from view. Since time immemorial, darkness symbolizes evil and light symbolizes good, which is symbolic. For light spills throughout the universe, and darkness is but a dark speck or shadow cast by a small celestial body, which has obscured a few rays of unquenchable light. So the light of absolute goodness is the good and life-giving force that spills throughout the universe, while evil is the insignificant shadow cast by our own ego. It obscures and shuts out the shining rays that try to break through to our souls. Night shrouds the world in its black, impenetrable mantle. But no matter how thick the darkness is, it covers only a small space on our little planet, and the rest of the universe is illuminated by bright light, and every living soul on earth knows that it will wake up in the bright light of morning. So know this, if a dark night of sorrow, suffering, and misery reigns in your soul, and you stagger about in your tired and uncertain steps, it is you who have shut your lusts out from the beatific light. And it is you and no one else who casts the dark shadow that has now come over you. Just as the darkness outside is only an evil shadow, a ghost that, having no permanent home, comes from nowhere and goes to nowhere, the darkness inside is just as much an evil shadow that fleetingly overshadows the living, light-generated soul. And then I hear an inner voice say, so why do we have to go through this darkness and this evil? Because of our ignorance, we choose this path, and as we go through suffering, we begin to understand what is good and evil. As we pass through the darkness, we begin to appreciate the light more. Evil is the direct consequence of ignorance, but when we have learned all the lessons, ignorance will pass away and wisdom will take its place. But just as a stubborn child refuses to learn lessons, so some refuse to learn the lessons of life. And so they will remain in darkness forever, condemned to be repeatedly tormented by the hellish torments of disease, hopelessness, and sorrow. But he who wishes to do away with the evil around him must be willing to learn and be willing to undergo those punishments, without which there is no wisdom, no eternal peace and happiness. Sure, you can lock yourself in a closet and deny the existence of light, but it's everywhere outside, and the darkness is only in the person in the room. So you can close yourself off from the light, or you can begin to dismantle the impregnable walls of prejudice, selfishness, and lies you have built around yourself and let in the shining rays of omnipresent light. Through meticulous introspection, make sure that the evil really, and not just in theory, goes away, becomes a minor episode, a shadow that you yourself cast. Realize that suffering, unhappiness, and sorrow have befallen you by virtue of an absolute and immutable law, and that they have happened because you deserve them, because they are necessary to you, and that by first enduring and then learning the lesson, you will become stronger, wiser, nobler. Once you have succeeded, you will be able to determine the circumstances of your life, you will remelt evil into good, and with a masterful hand you will weave the perfect fabric of your own destiny. What a night! O watchman! See the rays of the dawn over the high mountains, and the golden herald shone. The sky is lit up with light. He is coming to banish darkness and an evil army of demons, to pierce with a shining beam, and lies bring down the gloomy house. It's morning, the light of my eyes, already in its fifth. It gilds the mountain tops. He illuminated the expanse of the earth, and the shadow of night receded. The merry day will come, the merry day will come, and everything that hates the light drown in light magic. 1. Chapter 2. The world is a mirror of the soul. As you are, so is your world. Everything in the universe comes down to your own inner world. What's outside doesn't really matter, because it's all just a reflection of your own soul. It all depends only on what you have inside, for all that is outside is only a reflection and will be colored in the appropriate tone. Everything you know for sure is contained in your own experience, and everything you will ever know will enter your world through the gateway of experience and become part of yourself. Your world is your thoughts, aspirations, and dreams. Everything in the universe that is beautiful, joyful, and blissful, or ugly, painful, and dreary, resides within you. With your thoughts alone you can create or destroy your life, your world, your universe. As you mentally build your inner world, so will be your outer life, and all its circumstances will be built accordingly. Whatever you are hiding in the innermost recesses of your heart, sooner or later the secret will be revealed and, by the immutable law of cause and effect, will be embodied in external reality. A soul that is wicked, dirty, and selfish absolutely naturally gravitates toward unhappiness and disaster. A soul that is pure, unselfish, and noble gravitates toward happiness and prosperity. Man brings his own destiny upon himself, and it cannot be that anyone should receive what does not belong to him. But to realize this, we must first recognize the universality of divine right. All events in a person's life are conditioned by inner phenomena. A person's soul is the sum of his life experiences, thoughts and feelings, and his body is only a perishable instrument for expressing thoughts and feelings in the outside world. Consequently, your thoughts are your true self, and the world around you, animate or inanimate, takes on the very appearance that your thoughts give it. All that we are is the result of our thoughts, said the Buddha. It follows that if one is happy, it is only because one is mentally in joy, and if one is unhappy, it is only because one is mentally in sadness and despair. Whether a man is cowardly or courageous, foolish or wise, troubled or serene, the cause of his inner state is in his soul, not in any external circumstance. And then I literally hear a chorus of voices exclaiming, "Do you really mean to say that external circumstances have no effect on us?" I say no such thing, but I assert and believe that circumstances affect us just as much as we allow them to. You are a slave to circumstances if you don't have a proper understanding of the nature of the spirit and don't know how to use thought, and what power it has. You believe that destiny has enough power to lift you up or destroy you. You believe in it. Faith is a little word for all your joys and sorrows, and therefore you submit to fate and become its slave, while it is your absolute mistress. In so doing, you give fate power and authority. From now on you are at the mercy of your circumstances. You grieve or rejoice, you fear or hope, you feel strong or weak, it all depends on how you see the situation. Among my acquaintances were two people who had experienced the loss of their hard-earned money. One of them was shocked, upset, nervous, and completely despondent. The other, after reading in the morning paper that the bank where his money was deposited had gone bankrupt and he had lost everything, said calmly and firmly, "What happened is what happened, and no amount of wailing can bring it back. You've got to work." And he took up the business with renewed vigor and soon became rich. And my first acquaintance, who kept bemoaning his lost money and whining about how unlucky he was, remained a toy and a tool of evil fate. In reality, he was a victim of his own weakness and slave mentality. For one, the loss of money was a curse, for he himself gave the event a pessimistic and catastrophic character. For another, the same event was a blessing, because it gave him strength to start over again. If fate or circumstance had commanded our happiness or unhappiness, it would have had the same effect on all people. In reality, the same situations benefit one person and harm another, because good and evil do not sprout from the situation as such, but from the person who finds himself in it. Once you understand this, you will learn how to control your thoughts, discipline and order your spiritual life. And then you will rebuild your inner temple, discarding everything unnecessary and superfluous so that only joy, tranquility, vitality, compassion, love, beauty, and immortality may dwell in your soul. We look at all objects and events with an inner eye. And where one sees perfection in beauty, another will see nothing but repulsive ugliness. One day a certain nature lover was wandering along country roads in search of discoveries. In the vicinity of some cattle yard he stumbled upon a large puddle of brackish water. As he filled the bottle with water for later examination under a microscope, he carelessly began to ooze an "ah" over the innumerable hidden wonders that the puddle contained. Turning to an untrained son of the field standing nearby, he said, "Yes, my friend, this puddle contains 100, no, 1,000,000 universes. All we need is the right instrument to be able to discern them." To which the simple-minded bumpkin reluctantly countered, "There are plenty of tadpoles in the water, and it's easy to catch them." Where the naturalist with a head full of knowledge saw an ideal of beauty and harmony, the unenlightened mind saw only a muddy puddle of tadpoles. A wildflower, thoughtlessly trampled by the foot of a random passerby, in the eyes of the spiritualized poet turns into an angelic message from another world. For many, the ocean is just a bloody puddle of water on which ships sail and sometimes crash, but for the soul of the musician, it is a living thing, and he hears in it sounds the shimmering of truly divine harmony. Where mediocrity sees disaster and chaos, the philosopher sees a perfectly balanced chain of cause and effect. Where the materialist sees nothing but death, the mystic sees living, eternal life. We look at all events and phenomena with an inner eye and therefore see other people as we see ourselves. The disbeliever believes that everyone around him is suspicious of one another. The liar takes comfort in the thought that he is not stupid enough to believe in the existence of such a phenomenon, as a perfectly truthful person. The envious and jealous man sees everyone as his own. The miser is convinced that everyone is out to steal his money. The one who did not shrink from anything in order to get rich, sleeps with a revolver under his pillow and believes that the world is full of scoundrels eager to rob him. The worst kind of philanderer looks upon a saint as a hypocrite. And those who abide in love see it in everything. The trustful and honest are not tormented by suspicion. Those who are good-natured and merciful, who are able to rejoice in the good fortune of others, do not know what envy is at all. And he who has realized Godhead in himself sees it in all things, even in wild animals. People are convinced of the rightness of their view of the world, because, according to the law of cause and effect, the same thing will happen to them. And so they make friends with people of the same type as themselves. The old proverb, "A fisherman sees a fisherman from afar," has a much deeper meaning than is commonly believed, because in the astral, as well as in the material world, like attracts like to like. You want to do good? Do good. You want the truth? Tell the truth. You reap what you sow. Your world is a reflection of yourself. If you are the kind of person who prays for the salvation of your soul and trusts in the sweetness of paradise in the afterlife, I can comfort you, you can enter paradise and taste the much sought-after bliss right now. Heaven is the whole universe, it's in you, you just have to find it. He who knows the hidden laws of existence says so. The kingdom of God is within you, Luke 17 verse 21. The only thing you have to do is believe. Just believe and then meditate on it until understanding comes. With this, you begin to cleanse and beautify your inner world. In time, the insignificance and powerlessness of the external world will become obvious to you compared to the magical power of the human personality. If you want to fix the world, to banish from it vices and troubles, turn his deserts into a blooming garden, that they bloom like a rose. Fix it yourself. If you want to turn the world away from the sin in which he has long resided, resurrect broken hearts, to dispel sorrow and bring joy, disgust yourself. If you want to heal the world from a long illness, to stop suffering, to bring healing joy, and restore the unhappy to peace, heal yourself. If you want to wake up the world from mortal sleep and ruinous discord, to bring love and peace, and the light and joy of eternal life, wake up yourself. Chapter 3. How to get out of poverty. By recognizing that evil is but a passing shadow cast by our ego on the universal idea of the eternal good, and that the world is a mirror in which everyone sees his own reflection, we can go up a few more notches and reach a level of perception from which to view the law. Everything in the world is caught up in a continuous cycle of cause and effect, and nothing in the world escapes the rule of law. Law reigns everywhere, from the most trivial of human words, thoughts and actions to the celestial bodies and constellations. No arbitrariness could last a moment, for that would be a subversion of the law. Therefore, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, it is only a link in an inextricable chain of cause and effect. And the secret springs of what happens to us are hidden in the law itself. As you sow, so shall you reap is the axiom inscribed in fiery writing over the gates of eternity, and no one can circumvent it. He who puts his hand into the fire will be burned until the fire runs out. Neither curses nor entreaties will change that. Hatred, anger, jealousy, envy, lust, and greed are also fires, and he who touches their flames will suffer painfully. Such states of mind are rightly called evil, for they all represent an attempt, through our folly, to overthrow the law. Such attempts inevitably lead to inner turmoil and chaos, and sooner or later come out in the form of external circumstances: sickness, distress, failure, accompanied by suffering, grief, and despair. Whereas love, meekness, kindness, and purity are the coolness that envelopes with calm those souls who are in harmony with divine law. Their eternal companions are health, prosperity, constant success, and good fortune. By deeply understanding the operation of this great law, to which the entire universe is subjected, one achieves a state called humility. Understanding that justice, beauty, and love rule the universe is tantamount to recognizing that all our troubles and suffering are the result of an unwillingness to obey the law. This kind of understanding gives strength and power, and only on this is true success and happiness based. To be patient and humble in all circumstances and to see events as a necessary step in learning is to soar above suffering. We will easily overcome them and no longer fear their return. The humble man in all his affairs keeps his eye on the law. In fact, he identifies himself with the law, and therefore always wins. What he builds cannot be destroyed. The cause of strength as well as weakness is in ourselves. The cause of happiness as well as of unhappiness is in us and in no one else. You can't take a step forward if there is no spiritual growth. Without a deep understanding of things, there is no solid ground for prosperity and tranquility. If you say that you are a slave to circumstances, longing for a better life, for more favorable opportunities, an expanded field of activity, a cure for diseases, you are most likely cursing fate, which binds you hand and foot deep down. It is to you that I speak. Listen, and let my verb burn into your heart. You can improve your life however you want if you decide to improve your inner world. I know at first it may seem like it leads nowhere. This is always the case with the truth. Only lies and delusions at first look remarkably promising and attractive. But if you take the path of growth, if you persist in disciplining your spirit, eradicating weaknesses, and allowing the powers of the soul and spirit to unfold, you will be amazed at the incredible changes that will occur in your outer life. The further you go, the more brilliant opportunities will be scattered along your path, and you will have the strength and intelligence to make good use of them. You'll make real friends, you'll be magnetically attracted to your kindred spirits, and the right books and other help will come from somewhere that you didn't even ask for. Perhaps now you are alone, friendless, struggling in the grip of poverty, longing for some kind of relief from your plight, but it is still as heavy as ever, and an impenetrable darkness envelopes you more and more. Perhaps you complain and lament your fate, blaming your parents, employers, and a higher power that so undeservedly punished you with poverty and deprivation, while giving someone else the gift of wealth and peace. Stop whining and grumbling. You are all wrong. The cause of your poverty is in you. And where there is a cause, there is a cure. The very fact that you are complaining shows that you deserve such a fate, that you have no faith. And that is the basis of all achievement. In a universe where the law rules, there is no room for injustice. Nervousness and grumbling are suicidal for the soul. This way you shackle yourself even more tightly around your hands and feet and bring darkness upon yourself. Change your outlook on life, and external circumstances will immediately change. Grow in faith and knowledge to become worthy of a better life. Above all, try to make the most of the best that is in you. Don't delude yourself into imagining that you can neglect the small tasks and go straight to the big ones. Even if you succeed, it will very soon crumble to dust and you will find yourself back where you were to learn the lesson you neglected. Like a child in school, you must first master the first grade curriculum and then move on to the second grade. Therefore, before you get the much desired benefits, you must first honestly work on the opportunities you already have. This truth is best illustrated by a wonderful parable about talents. For it clearly shows that if we use what we have for evil, or neglect it, or allow it to deteriorate, then no matter how small and modest our talent may be, even that little will be taken away from us, for we have proved by our conduct that we do not deserve it. You may be living in a miserable shack, in the most disgusting and miserable conditions. If you want a bigger and more comfortable place to live, you need to become worthy of it, and to do that you need to try to turn your shack into a little paradise. Keep it perfectly clean. Make it as beautiful and pleasing to the eye as your limited resources will allow. Prepare your humble meals with all the diligence possible and set a simple table with maximum taste. If you can't afford a rug, carpet your rooms with smiles and nail it down with friendly words with a hammer of patience. Such a rug will not burn out in the sun or wear out from constant use. When you improve your surroundings, you will rise above it, and in your hour you will move into a better home. It is waiting for you. Your task is to learn to live up to it. Maybe you don't have enough time to think and work hard on yourself. You feel that you spend too much time at work and get very tired. If so, try to make the most of what little time you have. There's no point in wanting more time if you're wasting even the little you have now. For it will only make you lazier and more indifferent. Neither poverty nor lack of time is the absolute evil that you imagine it to be. If you cannot turn around, it is only because you have defined the circumstances as evil, when in reality they are within you. Get it through your head that by disciplining and perfecting your spirit, you become the master of your own destiny. As you feel more and more the transformative power of self-discipline, you will understand more and more clearly what is behind it, and eventually you will come to understand that so-called evil can be turned into the greatest good. And then you can use your poverty to learn patience, hope and courage, the lack of time to learn to act quickly and make decisions without missing the precious moment of opportunity. Just as beautiful flowers grow on the roadside, the color of humanity sprouts from the scarce soil of poverty. Where there is hardship and adversity, virtue blossoms brightest. It is quite possible that your boss is a horrible tyrant and, as you think, bullies you. Take it as a necessary stage in your development. And no matter how fierce the boss is, respond to him with meekness and forgiveness. Show humility, patience, and never for a moment lose self-control. Take advantage of this situation, for through it you will gain spiritual strength, and at the same time you will be able to influence your employer to be ashamed of his behavior when he looks at you. At the same time, meekness will lift you up to the heights of the spirit, and you will be able to attract circumstances that are more suitable for you. Instead of whining, soar above slavery on the wings of the spirit. Before you whine that you are someone else's slave, stop being a slave to yourself. Look into your heart, examine yourself without indulgence. Perhaps you will find in it slave thoughts, desires, and household habits. Exterminate the slave in you. Stop indulging yourself, and then no one will have the right to enslave you. Once you have overcome your own ego, all your sorrows and hardships will be behind you and all your difficulties will be within your grasp. Don't complain that the rich oppress you. After all, if tomorrow you were suddenly rich, you might become an oppressor yourself. Remember that, according to the law of absolute justice, he who oppresses you now will himself be enslaved tomorrow, and there is no escaping this. It may well be that yesterday you were rich and oppressing someone. If so, you are only paying off a debt, so be strong and grow in your faith. Constantly contemplate the absolute good and justice. Try to rise above the petty and personal and embrace the universal and divine. Cast aside the illusion that someone is hurting or oppressing you. Look deep into your soul, remember the laws that govern it, and try to understand that your only real abuser is yourself, your inner self. There is nothing more degrading, insulting, and murderous to human dignity than self-pity. Throw it away. You will not have a better life as long as this plague eats away at your heart. Stop judging others and begin to blame yourself. Do not condone any thoughts, desires, or actions that are incompatible with the ideals of holiness and the highest good. By doing so, you will build a home on the rock of eternity, and in your hour you will have everything you need for happiness and well-being. It is truly impossible to get out of poverty or any other difficult circumstances once and for all if evil lives inside you. To pave the way to true riches, one must make one's soul virtuous. Where there is no true virtue, there can be no prosperity, no wealth, no power, for they are all only the consequence of virtue. I know that money sometimes goes to people who do not have an ounce of virtue, and they do not aspire to it at all. Such profits are not true wealth, they come and go. Here is David's testimony: I envied the foolish, seeing the prosperity of the wicked. Their eyes rolled with fat, their thoughts wandered in their hearts. So did I not purify my heart in vain, and wash my hands in innocence? And I thought how to understand it. But it was hard in my eyes until I entered into the sanctuary of God and understood the end of them. Psalm 72 verses 3 and 7, 13, 16-17. The prosperity of the wicked was a great test for David until he entered the sanctuary of God, where he understood what their end would be. You can also enter this sanctuary. It is within you. It is a state of mind where everything dirty, personal and perishable has been banished from the soul and the highest law of the universe reigns in it. This enlightened state of mind is the sanctuary of the Most High. When, after a long struggle and all feats of abstinence, you enter this divine temple, the fruit of every human thought and deed, whether good or evil, will be revealed to your unclouded gaze. And then your faith will no longer weaken at the sight of a scoundrel who has accumulated untold material riches, for you will know that he will inevitably become poor again and sink to the bottom. A rich man without virtue is in fact a poor man, and therefore, for all his wealth, he is bound to become poor and go to the world. This is as true as the fact that rivers flow into seas and oceans. And even if such a man dies rich, he will surely return to reap the bitter fruits of his immorality. Let him get rich 1,000,000 times, as many times he will be thrown back into poverty until he overcomes spiritual poverty. And he who is materially poor but rich in virtues moves steadily toward prosperity, bliss, and joy. If you want to become truly rich, you must first become virtuous. Therefore, it is unwise to set for oneself such a goal as wealth, much less to make it the only goal of life and to greedily strive for it. In order to become rich, one must first conquer oneself. But even self-improvement is not the main thing here. Set a goal of useful and unselfish service to people, and in so doing you will come closer to the absolute and unchangeable good. Are you saying that you want wealth not for your own sake, but so that you can use it to do good and make others happy? If this is the real motive in your desire to become rich, you will surely become rich. For you are strong only when, for all your wealth, you prefer to look upon yourself as a servant rather than a master. But first, take a good look at your motives, because in most cases, a person who wants to make money is driven by the lust for fame and the need to act as a benefactor or reformer. If you don't use what little you have for good, you can bet that the more money you make, the more selfish you will become, and even if you try to use your money for good works, it will only be a hidden form of pride. If you really want to do good, then why wait? You don't need money, you can do good right now, at this very moment, at this very point. If you really are as altruistic as you think you are, prove it by sacrificing yourself for others. No matter how poor you are, there is always room in life for self-sacrifice, because the poor widow put all her money into the treasury of the temple in Jerusalem. A man who really wants to do good will not wait until he is rich, but will come to the altar of sacrifice, leave everything unworthy that was in him there, and go out to serve neighbor and far, friend and foe. Just as the effect follows from the cause, wealth and power are the fruit of spiritual goodness, and poverty and nothingness are the fruit of evil. Neither true wealth, nor nobility, nor power is reducible to money, and he who loves money alone is on a slippery slope. Your true riches are virtues, and your real strength is virtues in action. Cleanse your heart and you will improve your lot. Lust, hatred, anger, vanity, pride, greed, indulgence, selfishness, stubbornness are all poverty and nothingness, whereas love, spiritual purity, meekness, humility, compassion, generosity, altruism and self-sacrifice are wealth and power. Once you have conquered the passions that condemn you to poverty, an all-conquering spiritual power will awaken in you. And if you manage to strengthen yourself in the highest virtue, the whole world will be at your feet. The rich are not spared their troubles either, and they are often farther from happiness than the poor. And here we see that happiness depends not so much on money and the size of possessions as on the state of mind. Maybe you're an employer and you're in endless trouble with the people you hire, and if good and faithful employees show up, they soon leave for some reason. As a result, you have already begun to lose or completely lose faith in people. You're trying to fix things by raising wages and giving workers some relief, but it's not getting any better. Let me give you some advice. The root of all evil is not in the workers, but in yourself, and if you look within yourself with a humble and sincere desire to know the truth and correct your mistakes, sooner or later you will discover the cause of all your troubles. Perhaps it's some petty passion, or a hidden suspicion, or anger, which poisons everything around you and boomerangs on you, even if you do not say anything of this aloud and behave quite correctly. Think of your employees with kindness. Think of them as doing the part of the job that you yourself wouldn't bother to do if you were in their shoes. It is not very often that such a wonderful and beautiful humility of soul is found when a servant works selflessly and unselfishly, for the good of his master. But even rarer and even more beautiful is the nobility of soul when a man, neglecting his own good, cares for those who work under him. Such a person is 100 times happier and never complains about those who work for him. In the words of a famous and very large employer who never fired a single employee in his entire life, "I have always had the best relations with my employees. If you ask me how I did it, all I can say is that I always tried to do to them what I would want them to do to me. This is the secret of how the good stays and the bad goes. You say you are lonely, no one loves you, and you have no one else in the world. I beg you, for your own good, don't blame anyone but yourself. Be friendly to people, and very soon they will appear around you. Cleanse yourself, be kinder, and everyone will love you. No matter how heavy your burden, you can free yourself from it through the transformative power of self-purification and humility. Whether it is poverty that hurts our self-esteem, I remind you that we are talking about poverty that makes us small and miserable, not about the voluntary poverty that is the triumph of the free spirit, or wealth that weighs us down, or whether it is continuous misery, sorrow, and just petty troubles that color the fabric of life in dull and somber tones. All this can be fixed if we succeed in overcoming the petty passions that feed evil. And it is not so important that by the law of justice we have to clean up the mess we once made. It is much more important that by the same law at any given moment in our lives, we give way to new thoughts and deeds, which may be good or evil as we please. Moreover, nowhere is it written that a man who reaps what he sows, a bankrupt or a loser, must necessarily lose heart or his honor. Undoubtedly, strength of mind, inward righteousness, and integrity are the sources of all wealth, strength, and happiness. But he who clings to his own ego is his own enemy and is surrounded by enemies. And he who renounces his own ego is his own savior and is surrounded by friends like a lifeline. The holy glow of spiritual purity dispels all darkness and dispels all clouds. He who has conquered himself is the conqueror of the universe. And so it is time to get out of poverty, to put an end to misery, to stop complaining and sighing, to pacify heartache, and to break free from loneliness. All you have to do is put aside your own ego. Throw off the wretched rags of petty selfishness and put on the new and pure garment of universal love. Then the spiritual sky will appear in you, and with its light it will certainly illuminate your material existence. Whoever sets his foot firmly on the path of struggle against himself, whoever walks, leaning on the staff of faith, on the road of self-sacrifice, is sure to achieve the highest prosperity and to abide in eternal joy and bliss. To those who seek the highest good, everything contributes to gaining wisdom. Nothingness seems evil, and philosophy gives wings. All kinds of the devil's spawn. A deep sorrow blows over the star, waiting to shine in joyful light. Hell awaits them in heaven. But the night is ending. And from afar there is a golden dawn in the world. Defeats are the steps we climb, with the noblest goal to the brightest heights. Losses are turned into gains, and joy is illuminated. Steps of truth on the hills of time. Suffering leads to the path of enlightenment and bliss, where thoughts and words and deeds are holy, and gloomy clouds and shining sunshine equally bless us on the road to the heights. Misfortune is but a cloud that overshadows the path to the peaks going up into the sky. There's happiness, there's success, there's sunshine. They are waiting for us to conquer the mountain, a thick veil of doubts and fears, which looms over the valley of our hopes. Grim shadows with which the spirit struggles. A generous harvest of bitter tears. Suffering, misery, and infirmity. Bruises and bruises from torn bonds. These are all the steps we climb to achieve eternal happiness. Love, compassionate, shrewd, running towards. To the pilgrim from the land of destiny. Triumph and happiness await. Who will show humility of spirit. Chapter 4. How to manage your mental powers. Our thinking is a real weapon. We use it either for good or for evil. Everyone knows that the laws of physics exist, but few understand the principles of the spiritual world, in which mental impulses, either salvific or perilous, continually arise and scatter throughout the world. All the wisdom available to man on this sinful earth is contained in the commandment, love your enemies. It is a call here and now to subdue and transform thinking, to give up the mental slave status of selfishness. The Jewish prophets, with their excellent knowledge of the law, traditionally interpreted history based on the mentality of the people. For them, victory or disaster in a country was a reflection of the thoughts and lusts with which the people were possessed at that particular time. All of their prophecies are based on knowledge of spiritual laws. This is the foundation of all true wisdom. The history of a country is a consequence of the thinking of its people. Wars, epidemics and famines are a conflict of mental forces, the culmination of enmity, when the law makes its way through physical destruction. It is foolish to attribute wars to the influence of one man or group of men. War is the supreme and most monstrous manifestation of national egoism. Everything in the world is merely a manifestation of a conflict of mental forces. The universe is born of thought. Matter is only thought embodied in form. All human achievements are first a thought and then its manifestations. The writer, inventor, architect first has an idea. Then it is subjected to his careful and comprehensive refinement, until something unified emerges. And only after that does the idea get material embodiment. If the mental forces act in harmony with universal law, they are creative and salvific. If they are directed against the law, they become destructive and destructive. When our spirit is imbued with an absolute and unwavering faith in the omnipotence and supremacy of good, we are on its side and completely eradicate and destroy all evil in ourselves. Believe and you will be saved. And here the true meaning of salvation is revealed to us. It is salvation from darkness and the denial of evil and entering into the living light of absolute goodness, and embodying it in our own lives. Fear, nervousness, panic, doubt, anxiety, sorrow and grief are sure signs of ignorance and faithlessness. All of these conditions are a direct consequence of selfishness. They are densely mixed with an underlying belief in the omnipotence and superiority of evil. It is true atheism, therefore, to remain in such a sin, to ruin one's soul with despondency and longing, is atheism squared. Humanity must be saved from such conditions, and let no one boast of salvation if he is a helpless and submissive slave of passions. To be afraid or to panic is no less sinful than to swear or curse. For how can you fear or panic when you are on the side of absolute justice, universal love, and almighty goodness with all your soul? To be afraid, to be nervous and doubtful is to disbelieve and deny. It is from such states of mind that weakness, sinfulness, and insolvency arise, for they represent the destruction and disintegration of those positive mental forces that would otherwise promote the goal, and bear their own good fruit. To cope with such negative states of mind, one must become strong, stop being a slave and become a master. And the only way to rise is to grow steadily and persistently in spiritual knowledge. It is not enough to renounce evil in your heart. It is necessary to overcome it day by day in our deeds and actions. It is not enough to establish oneself in one's heart for goodness. It is necessary to do it with diligence and diligence. After the establishment of intellectual self-control comes the understanding of one's own mental powers, and then the mastery to use them for good. We can become masters of our own lives only to the extent that we can control our own mental forces, instead of slavishly submitting to them. Show me a man who, no matter what he touches, everything goes to waste and any money immediately slips through his fingers, and I'll show you a man in a state of mind that is simply incompatible with the very notion of power. To be forever mired in the mire of doubt, to be bogged down in the quicksand of fear, to run tirelessly in the winds of nervousness and anxiety, is to be a slave and to live in bondage, even if wealth and nobility themselves knock at your door day and night to let them in. Such a man, without faith and without a king in his head, is unable to conduct his affairs properly. He is a slave to circumstances and, by and large, to his own selfishness. Such a person is cured by grief. Through bitter experience, weakness is melted into strength. The driving forces of life are faith and determination. There is nothing that a strong faith and unwavering determination cannot accomplish. If you strengthen your faith day by day in a planned way, all the spiritual forces will be concentrated into a single fist. And if you nourish your purpose day by day, all those forces will be directed toward the goal you want to achieve. No matter what situation in life you are in, until you learn to stay calm, keep yourself in control, and concentrate your mental strength, don't even hope to achieve anything. You'll have no power, no honor, no money. Just imagine what would happen if you, for example, as a businessman, were faced with some unsolvable problem or saw that a disaster was coming. You would be frightened and panicked and confused and not know what to do. To remain in such a state of mind is like death, for in a panic it is impossible to reason intelligently. But if, early in the morning or late at night, when all the households are asleep, you sit down in a corner or in a far room of the house where no one is likely to disturb you, make yourself comfortable, and try to divert your mind from the source of anxiety by thinking of various pleasant things, your spirit will be filled with calm and confident strength and your anxiety will dissipate. Every time you feel like you're falling back into that damn panic again, immediately bring your spirit back to a state of calm. Only when you are at peace will you be able to concentrate completely on solving the problem, and the situation that seemed absolutely deadlocked and unsolvable will suddenly become simple and clear. You will realize that it is possible to look at things soberly and reason sensibly only in a state of absolute calm and serenity. Only then will it become clear to you how to act, and everything will end well. It is possible that you will have to try day after day, over and over again, until you manage to settle down completely. But if you keep trying, you will succeed. And the plan of action that arises in your mind during those lucid moments will have to be put into practice. Once you get back into the day's routine, doubts will probably creep back into your soul. Thoughts that your plan of action is wrong or insane will begin to haunt you. Chase such thoughts away. Look at everything solely with a sober eye, make decisions with a clear head, not in panic. A moment of peace is a time of enlightenment and judgment. In such psychological training, the disparate mental forces gather at one point and, like the beams of a searchlight, focus on the solution to the problem so that in the end it dissipates before them. There is no problem that will not retreat before the calm and mighty concentration of thought, and there is no righteous goal that will not be achieved in the shortest possible time by the intelligent use of spiritual powers. Until you have deeply and thoroughly studied your own character and defeated the many enemies lurking in your soul, you will not have the slightest idea of the great power of thought, of its inseparability from the material world, of its magical ability to completely transform the conditions of life and destiny. Every thought that arises in the mind is an emanation of power, which goes to seek refuge in the minds of those who are receptive to it. And that thought will boomerang back to you, whether for good or for evil. People's souls are constantly communicating with each other and exchanging mental powers. Selfishness and panic are extremely destructive forces. They provoke evil and nurture it in other people. And those, in turn, return what they perceive with redoubled force. And serenity, unselfishness, and purity are truly messengers of angels, bringing healing, salvation, and blessing on their wings. They resist the forces of evil, pour the oil of joy upon the churning waters of anxiety and sorrow, and return to broken hearts the heritage of paradise and immortality. Think good thoughts, and those thoughts will soon translate into the physical world and your lot will improve. Become the master of your mental powers and you will be able to structure your life as you wish. The difference between a savior and a sinner is that the first is the absolute master of his thoughts and spiritual powers, while the second is their slave, the plaything of his own passions. There is absolutely no other way to find true strength and serenity than through self-discipline, self-management, and self-purification. Whereas to be a slave to the passions is to be a wimp, a loser, and a nobody, of whom people have little use. Deny your petty likes and dislikes, your capricious loves and hates, your fits of anger and suspicion, your jealousy, envy, and other passions of which you are the slave and plaything. This is a task you must accomplish if you want to adorn the fabric of your life with golden threads of happiness and prosperity. If you are a slave, your life will inevitably depend on others. In order to stand firmly on your feet and achieve something, you must purge yourself of your passions and suppress any manifestations of selfishness. It is necessary to practice mindfulness day by day. This kind of entering into silence is a way of overcoming panic, of gaining spiritual strength. Until you learn how to do this, you can't expect to be able to focus your mental powers successfully on the tasks of life. Master the art of gathering your disparate forces into one powerful fist. Just as by draining and directing scattered puddles of standing water into a specially cut reclamation canal, one can turn a rotten swamp into golden cornfields or a fruit orchard, the man who has attained tranquility, who has subdued and directed all his mental currents into a single channel, will be saved and reap an abundant harvest. As you gain more and more power over your passions and impulses, you will feel more and more clearly the unprecedented inner strength and calmness accumulating within you, the certainty that they will never leave you. You will begin to show hidden powers, and if before all your efforts were miserable and ineffective, now you will be able to act with the calm confidence that is the key to success. Along with this new energy and strength, that inner light that is called intuition will shine in you, so that you will no longer wander in darkness, lost in doubt and speculation, but will see the truth and gain confidence. When this third eye is opened, your judgment and discernment will increase 100-fold, and prophetic vision will open, enabling you to foresee future events and to predict with amazing accuracy what your actions will lead to. And just as you transform yourself from the inside out, your outlook on life will change. Once you change the way you treat others, they will treat and behave differently toward you. Once you have risen above the demonic, elemental, and destructive forces, you will find yourself in the realm of good, inspiring spirits, which are the products of strong, pure, noble souls. Your bliss will be immeasurably multiplied, and you will find true joy, power, and energy. You will glow with them. And so, without any effort on your part, moreover, unconsciously and inexplicably for you, powerful people will begin to flock to you. You will have more power in your hands, and events will flow in the direction of the changes in your inner world. And man's enemies are his household, Matthew 10 verse 36. If you want to serve people, be strong and happy, you must not be a passive receptacle for evil, mean and wicked thoughts. Just as a wise master of his house gives orders to his servants and welcomes his guests at the door, you must learn to control your passions and decide for yourself which thoughts to let into the house of your soul. Even the humblest success in self-control makes one 100 times stronger. And he who perfects this sacred skill will attain true wisdom, strength of mind, and peace of mind. All the power of the universe will cooperate with him. It guards every step of the one who has become the master of his own soul. With an easy step to the seventh heaven ascend. You will fall into the abyss of hell with an arrow from the heights. Dream of imperishable and eternal beauty. Or get into vulgarity and filth with your head. For your thoughts are the light in the sky. Your thoughts are the darkness of the hellish abyss in the night. There is no bliss outside the temple of prophetic thoughts. Well, flower is not flower if you don't know about it. And all worlds will pass away, but the thought will remain. Fame, sainthood, and beauty are only dreams. The drama of life. In the divine plan I drew my plot. Nobility, dignity, shame and sorrow. And misery, and sorrow, and love, and enmity. Only masks of mighty and awe-inspiring thought. What governs destiny? 7 colors of the rainbow. They will reveal a shining beam. In the divine ode will merge all phenomena of the world. This dream fills you completely. The universe is waiting. When morning comes, and the dawn will awaken a man, the ideal will come true in no time. Hell will crumble to ashes. The 7th sacred sky, where only saints live, where evil is but a chimera. Goodness is the thought of love, where the truth shines. Out of a single thought grows up. Always think of great things. You will see the great things. And in spirit, looking at eternity, you will be in peace forever. Chapter 5. The Secret of Health, Strength and Success. We all remember with what enthusiasm, as children, we again and again listened to a favorite fairy tale. With what passion followed the twists and turns of fate of a good boy or girl, defenseless, caught in trouble because of the wiles of a crafty witch, a cruel giant or an evil king. And yet our hearts never worried about the hero's fate. We had no doubt at all that in the end he would shame all his enemies, that the good fairies would never abandon a man who had devoted himself to the service of truth and goodness. What unspeakable joy erupted in us when, at a critical moment, the queen of the fairies suddenly appeared from somewhere. The darkness dissipated, the troubles passed, and our deepest dreams came true. And I was there, drinking honey beer. And they lived happily ever after. Over the years, as we come closer and closer to discovering the so-called truth of life, the beautiful fairy tale world crumbles. Its magical inhabitants, written off to the archives of our memory, fade and turn to nothing. When we parted forever with our childhood dreams, we thought we were acting smart, as befits a strong adult. But now that we are once again children in the magical realm of wisdom, it is time to return to the exciting world of childhood dreams and make sure that fairy tales are pure truth. The fairy folk, small and inconspicuous, but endowed with victorious magical power, generously bestows upon us happiness, health, wealth, joy, and all the treasures of nature. This ghost comes alive again and gains immortality in the soul of a man who grows in wisdom, learns the power of thought and the laws governing the spiritual world. For him, the fairies are once again transformed into messenger angels, spirits working for the highest good. And those fortunate people who strive daily for the highest good will find good health, lasting prosperity, and endless joy in real life. There is no better protection for man than virtue. But true virtue is not merely outward conformity to the rules of morality, but rather purity of heart, service, unselfish love, and the absence of all conceit. To be in good spirits at all times means to spread goodness around you, which in one way or another affects everyone with whom you come in contact. Just as shadows melt at the first rays of the rising sun, evil turns to flight as soon as the spotlight of positive thinking shines on it from a heart fortified in purity and faith. Uncompromising faith and untainted purity are the constant companions of health, success, and strength. If the soul is pure and full of faith, neither sickness, nor distress, nor sorrow can take root in it, for in such a soul there is nothing to nourish them. Even physical health is highly dependent on the state of mind. This is what science is increasingly saying. The old views on man that he is a purely biological substance are rapidly becoming a thing of the past. They are being replaced by an admirable certainty that man is not reducible to his body and that the body is a consequence of the state of mind. Few people now believe that a person suffers because he has indigestion. On the contrary, a person has indigestion because he suffers. And in the near future even a child will know that all illnesses come from nerves. There is no evil in the universe that is not rooted in the human soul. Neither sin, nor sickness, nor sorrow, nor distress are part of the world order. They are the direct consequence of our ignorance of the true state of things. The story goes that there was once a philosophical school in India whose adepts led such a simple and holy life that they lived to be 150 years old. It was a great shame for them to fall ill, for illness was considered a sure sign of transgression. The sooner we realize and understand that sickness is not a punishment from some angry god or a trial sent by an evil fate, but a consequence of our own unrighteousness and sin, the sooner we will be on the road to health. Disease comes to those who attract it, whose souls are unhealthy, and bypasses those whose strong, clean and positive mental aura generates healing and life-giving currents. If you are angry, jealous, envious, stingy, panic at the slightest trouble and at the same time want to be healthy, do not even hope for it. There is no health in question if you continuously sow the seeds of sickness in your own soul. The wise man carefully avoids such conditions, for he knows that they are far more dangerous than a leaky sewer or filthy house. If you want nothing to hurt, if you want to feel perfectly healthy, put your mind and soul in order. Think of good things, think of love, let the elixir of goodness flow through your veins, and no other medicine is needed. Give up jealousy, envy, suspicion, worry, hatred, selfish self-justification, and your irritability, nervousness, and joint pains will pass. If you persist in sinful lusts, don't complain when you get sick. Here is a story that illustrates how closely our lusts and sickness are connected. One man was seriously ill and went to doctors, but all in vain. Then he traveled to many cities famous for their healing waters, but after bathing in them he became even worse. One night the sick man dreamed that the Holy Spirit appeared to him and said, "Have you really tried every cure?" To which the man replied, "Yes, all of them." "No, not all," objected the Holy Spirit. "Come with me, and I will show you the healing bath that you missed." The sick man obeyed and followed the Holy Spirit. He led him to a pool of clean, clear water and said, "Take a dip in this pool and you will be healed," and he disappeared. The man plunged into the font, and when he came out of it, he was amazed to find that the sickness had gone away. At the same moment he saw the word "refuse" flashed brightly over the font. When the man awoke, the hidden meaning of the dream was instantly revealed to him. He looked within himself and saw that he had been a victim of sinful excesses all along, and he vowed to end it once and for all. He fulfilled his vow, and from that day on the sickness slowly receded and soon disappeared altogether. Many people complain that they have lost their health at work. But in most cases, illness is the result of a waste of energy. If you want to be healthy, you have to learn to work without stress. Panicking, getting nervous, getting irritated over little things is a direct path to illness. Labor, whether mental or physical, is useful and healing. And a man who is able to work with a calm and clear mind, without arching his back, without irritation, without nervousness, completely forgetting about everything except the work he is doing, not only will achieve much more than someone who is always nervous and rushing, but will keep his health, a benefit that another worker will quickly lose. True health and success always go hand in hand, for in the mental world they are inextricably linked. Balance is not only good for bodily health, but it also helps to achieve one's goals in a planned and consistent manner. Put your thoughts in order, and your life will be well. Pour the oil of calm into the stormy waters of passion and prejudice, and the most terrible storms, no matter what trouble they may threaten, will not be able to overturn the caravel of your soul, sailing majestically on the ocean of life. And if the caravel is guided by a cheerful and strong faith, the ship will never go astray and happily avoid any dangers that might otherwise threaten it. All worthy work is done by the power of faith. Faith in the Almighty, in the supreme law, in your own labor and strength, and in your own ability to do this work are the strongholds on which you must erect your temple if you want to achieve anything, and still hold on and not fall into the abyss. To be guided by your best motives under all circumstances, to be true to yourself at all times, to trust your inner light and voice without reserve, to pursue your goal fearlessly and calmly, to believe that the future will reward you for all your thoughts and labors, knowing that the universe will never betray you and that you will be rewarded with mathematical precision. That is what faith means. Faith takes one out of the abyss of doubt, crushes mountains of problems, and one remains unharmed. Therefore, reader, first of all try to find this indestructible faith, for it is the pledge and talisman of happiness, success, tranquility, strength, everything that makes life beautiful and elevates it above suffering. If you have that faith, you will build your temple on an eternal stronghold. Nothing can destroy it. It will survive all the temptations of the world, which are ashes and will turn to ashes. Whether you are cast into the abyss of sorrow or lifted up to the heights of joy, always and everywhere keep faith within you. May it be your steadfast refuge. Hold fast to it, for it is indestructible and immortal. If you have faith, You will gain such spiritual strength that with a wave of your hand you will be able to dispel the hosts of evil spirits that have turned against you, and they will melt away like smoke, and you will achieve such success as no hunter of worldly goods ever dreamed of. If you have faith and do not doubt, not only will you do what is done, but if you also say to this mountain, "Be lifted up and cast into the sea," it will be done. Matthew 21 verse 21. Even today there are people who have found this faith. They live in it day in and day out, and through the hardest trials they have received glory and peace. It is enough for such people to say a word, and mountains of sorrow and disappointment, mental fatigue and physical pain will part before them and collapse into the sea of oblivion. If you have that faith, you no longer have to guess what's ahead, success or failure. Success will come all by itself. You will no longer have to be nervous about whether something will work or not. You will work calmly and joyfully, knowing that righteous thought and effort will inevitably lead to the desired results. I know a woman who always gets what she wants and is constantly enjoying life. To which one of her friends once said, "You're lucky. Every time you want something, it's there." It is true that her wishes do come true, as if by magic. But in reality, all my friend's happiness is just a consequence of the inner bliss that she has nurtured in herself and brought to full perfection. When we just want something, it brings nothing but disappointment. We also have to live accordingly. The fool wants and grumbles. The wise man toils and waits. My acquaintance, too, worked hard, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world. Through the power of her spirit, she built her temple of light out of the precious stones of faith, hope, joy, devotion, and love. This light shone in her eyes, illuminated her face. All who interacted with her felt its captivating magic. And so can you. Successes, failures, credibility you deserve for yourself. Your life depends on you. After all, a person's spiritual vector is the main factor determining his destiny. If love, holiness, and joy come from you, happiness will fall into your hands and your house will be a full cup. If hatred, wickedness, and discouragement come from you, curses, fear, and panic will rain down on you. You are the smith of your own happiness or sorrow, as the case may be. Every moment you give off vibes that determine whether your life will succeed or whether you will live it in vain. May your heart be big, loving, unselfish. May your authority and success be great and enduring, even if you earn almost nothing from it. If you are locked up in selfishness, even if you become a millionaire, your prestige and success, in the big scheme of things, will be utterly insignificant. Therefore, nurture a pure and unselfish spirit within yourself, and if you add to this nobility, holiness, faith, and determination, you will not only have great health and unchanging success, but also greatness, power, and glory. Even if you do not like what you do now, and your heart is not for such work, nevertheless perform your duties with scrupulous diligence. Think of the best work ahead of you, and you will soon open up in front of you a lot of interesting prospects. At all times, watch closely to see if any loophole has appeared, so that at the critical moment, when new paths open before you, you may stand ready with the prudence and foresight that only spiritual discipline can give. Whatever the task before you, concentrate completely on it, throw all the strength you have at it. Learn to do the small things perfectly, then you will be able to cope with the great things. If you persist in climbing the mountain, you will never fall. That is the secret of true strength. Constantly learn to use your resources wisely, concentrating them at any given moment on one thing. Only fools waste their intellectual and spiritual energies on entertainment, idle chatter, and petty bickering, not to mention wasteful absences. If you want true power, you have to cultivate self-control. You have to learn to stand firm on your feet. Any strength is associated with stability. A mountain, a boulder, 100-year-old oak that has withstood more than one storm, they all symbolize strength. Their solitary grandeur is united with their proud sturdiness. Quicksand, flexible reeds and reeds swaying in the wind symbolize weakness, for they are unstable and, taken separately from their fellows, absolutely useless. He is strong who is calm and unperturbed when his companions are overwhelmed by emotions or passions. Only he who succeeds in the art of self-control can dominate and rule. The hysterical, cowardly, thoughtless and frivolous type seeks company, for without support he will fall into an abyss. But he who is serene, courageous and thoughtful seeks solitude in the woods, in the desert, on a mountain top. Thus he becomes even stronger and learns to overcome more and more successfully the mental whirlpools that overwhelm mankind. Passion is not strength, it is an abuse of power, a dissipation of strength. Passion is like a violent storm that hits impregnable rocks with indomitable fury. Power, on the other hand, is the rock that looks calmly and serenely on the storm. The clearest example of true strength is Martin Luther. Tired of the endless entreaties of cowardly friends who were unsure of the safety of his move to Worms, he said, "If there were as many devils in Worms as there are shingles on the roofs of houses, I would go even then." When Benjamin Disraeli's first speech in the House of Commons of the British Parliament failed and was met with ridicule, he showed rudiments of strength and exclaimed, "Laugh if you like. I will go to my seat now, but the time will come when you will all listen to me." A young man I knew, who was constantly being hurt, ridiculed by his friends and told by everyone around him that it was time for him to settle down, said, "The time is not far off when you will be admiring my accomplishments." In doing so, he showed that he had this indestructible inner strength to overcome countless difficulties. All my acquaintances' labors were ultimately successful. If you don't have that strength yet, you can get it through training. And with strength comes wisdom. To begin with, you will have to put aside all those passions of which you have been a voluntary victim up to now. Uncontrollable wild laughter, gossip, meaningless jokes, all this should be discarded, because they are a waste of precious energy. St. Paul never more clearly demonstrated his exceptional insight into the secret laws of personal growth than when he warned the Ephesians against idle talk and ridicule, for they destroy the spiritual power and life in man. When you have succeeded in shielding yourself from this kind of exuberant amusement, you will begin to understand what true power is. Then you will be able to confront the mighty passions and lusts that hold your soul captive and block the way to the light, and you will know where to go next. First of all, you must have one goal that is very necessary for humanity. Devote yourself wholeheartedly to achieving that goal. Let nothing distract you. Remember that a two-hearted man is not steadfast in all his ways. Hurry to learn and don't be in a hurry to ask. Understand thoroughly what you're doing and try to do it yourself. Always and in everything listen to your inner voice, because it will never let you down. Then you will go from victory to victory, climbing higher and higher each time. Your horizons will expand, and you will see the real beauty and meaning of life. Cleanse yourself, and you will be well. Put on the armor of faith, and you will be victorious. Learn self-control, and you will be strong, and you will succeed in whatever you do. For when you are no longer a slave to your own ego, you will become part of the great law, and you will never again be in opposition to oneness and the greater good. The health you find will never fail you. The success that you will achieve, contrary to all calculations, will be with you forever. The power and prestige you gain will only grow with time, for that is the unchangeable law on which the universe rests. The secret of health is mental purity and spiritual discipline. The secret of success is unshakable faith and the right goal. With a steady hand curbing the infernal horse of lusts is the secret of strength. All avenues are open before me. The way of light and the way of darkness, the way of life and the way of death. Wide and narrow. Good and bad, fast and slow. I can take the path I want. And along the way, find out what's good and what's bad. All good things wait for me to tread lightly. Clothed in unbreakable oaths. On the narrow way, great and holy. Untainted purity, and I shall abide there forever. A path to which no one who scoffs and scorns has recourse. To the blooming meadows I will go, breaking through the thorns. Can I stay in the land of success and health? And wait for your turn if in every moment of life I will be patient and full of noble love, and committed to all that is sacred in the world. Only in this way will I be dignified on this bright day. I see the pens of the immortals. He who seeks finds. And I will find, perhaps. I'll say nothing, but having lost, I'll give it back in full. The law will not bend under me, but I myself. I will be silent before the law, so that my troubles may cease, and that he may resurrect his soul. I am for the light and joy of life, so that I will not cry my heart out again. It is not proper for me to blaspheme boldly, to denigrate with pathetic murmuring the good. He who seeks will find. The holy steps lead me to wisdom, knowledge, and faith. It's not my business to grumble and trample. My business is to know and understand. Chapter 6. The Secret of Universal Happiness. The thirst for happiness is great, but the troubles never go away. Most poor people yearn to get rich, believing that money is the ultimate happiness and that it will never come. Meanwhile, many rich people, who can satisfy their every whim, suffer from boredom and satiety, and their happiness is even less than that of the last beggar. If we ponder this state of affairs for a while, we will come to realize that the presence of certain material possessions, just as the absence of them, does not make a person happy. Otherwise, the poor would always be miserable and the rich happy. And we see this in life. Among the bitterest poor people I have ever known, many were showered with wealth and luxury, while among the most cheerful and happy people were those who could barely make ends meet. Many of those who have become rich have honestly confessed that, because of this permissiveness, life has lost its former charm, and they have never been as happy as they were when they were in need. So what is happiness and how do we find it? Perhaps it is a chimera, an illusion, and only suffering is eternal. If we observe and reflect, we will find that everyone around us, except those who have embarked on the path of wisdom, believes that happiness is the satisfaction of desires. It is this belief, rooted in human ignorance and constantly fueled by selfish lust, that is the cause of all misfortune. And I would not reduce the word a desire itself to crude lusts, for it extends to higher spheres where evil operates in a much more subtle way. It holds intellectuals, aristocrats, and artists captive, who have been deprived by their passions of spiritual beauty and purity, the highest expression of which is happiness. Most people are willing to admit that selfishness is the cause of all the world's misfortunes. But in doing so, they fall into the pernicious delusion that other people's selfishness is to blame, but not their own. As soon as you are ready to admit that all your misfortunes are the result of your own selfishness, you will be at the very gates of heaven. But as long as you are convinced that you yourself are unhappy because of the selfishness of others, you will remain a prisoner of delusion. Happiness is an inner state of complete satisfaction, which is the source of joy and tranquility, and in which there is no room for any desire or passion. The satisfaction resulting from the quenching of desires is short-lived and illusory, and is followed by an even greater need for their satisfaction. Lust is insatiable, it craves more and more satisfaction. Passion demands more and more devotion from its adherents. Then comes physical or mental pain. One burns in the purifying flame of suffering. Lust is hell, the center of all torment. The renunciation of lust is the finding of paradise, where joy awaits the pilgrim. At first my mind wandered through the heavens. The tablet, the calum, and heaven and hell sought. The mind said to me, heaven and hell are with you. You carry everything in you that you've been longing for, too. Heaven and hell are states of mind. Immerse yourself in selfishness and all its pleasures, and you will find yourself in hell. Soar above your passions, renounce them completely, and forget about yourself, and you will enter heaven. Selfishness is blind, reckless. It brings no true knowledge and always leads to suffering. Right perception, impartial judgment, and true knowledge are all attributes of holiness. only to the extent that you are sanctified will you be able to know what true happiness is. If you persist in the pursuit of personal happiness, you will never find it, but you will sow the seeds of misery everywhere. The more you advance in the art of selfless service to others, the happier you will be and reap a harvest of bliss. To love, not to be loved. The blessing of the soul. To give, not to receive. This is our aspiration. What do you yearn for and want? That's what you get. So be your soul full. True life. 3. Clinging to your own ego, you will forever be in sorrow. Deny yourself and you will find peace. To be self-obsessed is to lose not only happiness, but also what we imagine to be its source. See how the glutton continually digs for more and more delicacies to whet his blunted appetite, and how he then, suffering from bloating and heaviness in the stomach, is unable to eat anything at all with pleasure. And he who has subdued his passions not only does not seek, but does not even think of any gastronomic delights and enjoys the most humble of foods. A man who looks at the world through the eyes of the ego imagines that the fulfillment of desires is the highest, divine happiness. And when he succeeds in grasping what he wanted, it suddenly turns out to be the quintessential misery. Truly, he that hath saved his life shall lose it, and he that hath lost his life for my sake shall save it. Matthew 10 verse 39. True happiness will come when you stop persisting in selfishness and give up. When you are ready to part with the little thing that you now cherish so dearly and that one day will slip through your fingers, only then will you discover that such a terrible loss is actually the greatest gain. To save in order to possess, there is no greater delusion and source of suffering than this. To lose in order to save is truly the way of life. One cannot find true happiness in the obsessive pursuit of something that, by its very nature, is bound to pass away. True and genuine happiness can only be found in that which is eternal. Therefore, rise above attachment and craving for material things and you will enter into the spirit of the eternal and, growing more and more in holiness, self-sacrifice and love, you will be established in the spirit and find happiness that will never turn into trouble, and will not be taken from you under any circumstances. The soul that has achieved complete self-denial in its love for others, along with the highest happiness, also obtains immortality, because it comprehends the essence of Godhead. Look back on your own life and you will see that moments of supreme happiness have come when you have spoken a word, or performed some action filled with compassion and sacrificial love. Spirituality, happiness, and harmony are synonymous. Harmony is one of the hypostases of the great law, which is spiritually expressed in love. But selfishness is enmity, and to be selfish is to rebel against the divine order. Once we understand that love is the negation of the ego, we will weave our voice into the harmony of the spheres, into the divine music, into the universal song. And this inexpressible melody is the happiness we have found. People scurry back and forth in a blind search for happiness, but they can't find it. They won't find it until they realize that happiness already fills them and the entire universe, and that they themselves, in their selfish vanity, are closing themselves off from it. I chased happiness to catch it. Past the centennial oak and the shaky grapevine. It was running away, and I was catching up, over the hills. Through fields and meadows, through purple valleys. And in a swift run he jumped over the rumbling brook. I climbed the cliffs where the eagles spend the night. I have passed through all the lands and seas. But happiness forever eluded me. Exhausted, without strength, I stopped the chase. I lay down to sleep on a deserted shore. But then one came and asked for food. The second one came and asked for alms. And bread and gold in my bony palm I put. Then came the third to ask for sympathy. Another came after him to ask for peace. And to all I gave the best I had. And then, look! Happiness appeared to me. And with soft lips it whispered, "Take me, for I am yours now." These beautiful lines by Walter Burley reveal the secret of true happiness. Sacrifice the personal and the temporal and you will immediately ascend to the place where eternity reigns. Throw away your narrow and cramped ego, which cares only for its own petty interests, and you will enter the circle of angels, the holy of holies of absolute love. Dissolve yourself completely in the service of others, and divine happiness will deliver you from all sorrow and suffering. My first step was a good thought, my second step a good word, my third step a good deed, and so I entered heaven. If you follow the same path, you too will enter heaven. And not someday, but now. Heaven is only attainable for the unselfish. Only the pure in heart will see its fullness. If you have not yet found this boundless happiness, you can begin now. All you have to do is to keep contemplating the high ideal of unselfish love in your mind, and to keep being its equal. Trust, or prayer, is desire directed to the heavenly realms. It is the soul turning to its divine origins, for only there can true satisfaction be found. Trust transforms the destructiveness of lust into a good and saving power. To trust means to make an effort and throw off the bonds of lust. It is the prodigal son who, having learned from his loneliness and suffering, returns to the Father's chambers. When you rise above your selfishness, when you throw off one by one the binding chains of your passions, you will understand the joy of giving, the giving of yourself, your intellect, love and light, with which you shine from within. Then you will realize that it is truly more blessed to give than to receive. But giving must come from the heart, without the shadow of selfishness or the calculation of a reward. The gift of pure love is always blessed. If you resent not being thanked, or not having your name in the paper, know that you were driven by vanity, not love. You gave a gift only to get something in return. You don't give, you take. Sacrificing yourself for the good of others, immediately forgetting all the good things you've done for people is the secret of true happiness. Always be on your guard against the recurrence of selfishness, and diligently heed the sacred lessons of self-sacrifice. In this way you will ascend to the seventh heaven and forever abide in the cloudless glow of absolute happiness, clad in the resplendent robes of immortality. Are you looking for happiness that won't come? Are you looking for an everlasting joy in which there will be no sorrowful days? As a doe longs for streams of water, do you long for love, life and peace? Then put aside your lust and selfishness. Are you stuck in the ways of suffering, haunted by unhappiness and heartache? Are you weary on the road, and your feet are bloody? Are you longing for a refuge of tranquility where there will be no tears or suffering? Then tame your passions and find absolute peace. Chapter 7. How to become successful and rich. True wealth and success are bestowed only upon those whose souls are filled with virtue, trust, generosity, and love. He who is not endowed with these qualities will never be successful and rich, for wealth, like happiness, is not a material possession but a spiritual achievement. A greedy man may become a millionaire, but he will always be miserable, and poor. Even in material terms he will be considered poor, for there is someone richer than him in the world. At the same time, a righteous man filled with generosity and love will become a real rich man, even if his possessions are not so great. Poor is the one who is dissatisfied. Rich is the one who is content with what he has. But the richest is the one who is generous with what he has. When we consider how much good there is, material and spiritual, in the universe, and then look at the blind zeal with which one tries to get hold of a few gold coins or to appropriate a few acres of dusty land, we will realize how ignorant selfishness is. And then it will become clear to us that self-interest is, in fact, self-destruction. Nature unconditionally gives us everything and loses nothing. Man, on the other hand, appropriates everything and loses it all at once. If you get really rich, don't assume that you can now act only according to your conscience. Don't let the word of competition shake your faith in the superiority of righteousness. What do you care about all this talk about competition law if you know that an inviolable law rules the world? Knowing that the law will prevail, I can face any meanness with peace of mind, for I know that it will inevitably collapse. Under all circumstances, do what you think is right, and believe in the triumph of the law. Believe that the universe is ruled by a light force and it will never leave you, so that you will always be protected. With that kind of trust, any losses you lose will turn into gains, and any curses that fall on your head will turn into blessings. Never stop being virtuous, generous, and loving, and if you add energy to that, you will really get rich. Don't believe people when they tell you that you should take care of yourself first, and then take care of others. Those who do so do not think of others at all, but are concerned only with their own comfort. For those who do this, the day will come when everyone will leave them. They will weep and wail in loneliness and longing, but no one will hear them or come to their aid. If a person considers himself superior to others, his noble impulses will not find an outlet and will be perverted and inhibited. May your soul open, may it accept others with love and generous warmth of heart, may your joy be great, may your happiness last forever, and may wealth and success come to you. Those who have turned from the righteous path, let them beware of competitors. Those who always act according to their conscience do not need such protection. These are not empty words. These days there are people who, by the power of virtue and faith, have overcome all their competitors and have not betrayed themselves in the slightest. In the midst of fierce competition, they have continually grown rich, while those who have dug them a hole have fallen into it themselves. Good-heartedness is the best weapon against the forces of evil and protection in the time of trial. To cultivate good-heartedness means to achieve success, which no one can take away, and to gain wealth, which will last forever. The white garments in which the soul is clothed, stained with sin and sorrow and suffering. And no fonts of contrition, no sources of prayer. They won't wash them clean. And while I walk the path of ignorance, I am stained with the stains of a monstrous lie. Mud marks the crooked path of the ego, where longing looms and hurtful resentment stings. Only wisdom and knowledge can wash away those stains and cleanse my soul of dirt. For there are waters of love, and there rests peace that is serene, undisturbed, and eternal. Sin and repentance are the way of suffering. Knowledge and wisdom are the way of the world. The shortest way, I know from my own experience. Where is the beginning of happiness and where is the end of suffering? Let the ego go, and let truth take its place. Eternal, one, indivisible. Let it dwell in me and wash over me. The white garments in which the soul is clothed,